Hello there, this is Nova Topflex, and in this video I will speak with the annotations already present about the Markdown syntax. See at the very top for the annotations. If you want to follow along with me, please look at the annotations I've already covered and any new annotations I might cover along the way of this video. So ctext and ATX style headers may result in the same header styles, but keep in mind there are only two header styles, or two header levels rather, that can be represented on ctext. To get all the way to header level 6, ATX style is represented and is required for header levels 3 through 6. In the ctext style, you must follow a line by a series of equal signs for first level and dashes for second level headers. In the ATX style, the number of opening hashes determines the level. So you have one hash, and this is going to be immediately preceding the actual text of the header. If you have one hash preceding the text, it's identical to having a string of equal signs on the following line. And having two hashes preceding the header is identical to having a string of dashes rather than equal signs on the next line of the header. And then if you have three hashes, it's the third level header, 4, 4, 5, 5, and 6, 6. 6 is the highest level header that's expected or that normally exists in HTML. Officially, you have 6 header levels. Normally, they're expected to get smaller as you go, but in this Markdown demonstration, the 6th level header actually appears basically at the same level as the paragraphs. So that's H1, H2, H3, H4, H5. Note that H6 is larger than H5 in this sample, but would normally be smaller than H5 on a typical system. Sorry about that anyway. And so yes, you can also close the ATX style headers with closing hashes rather, sorry about that. So ctext uses the equals and dashes. ATX uses the hashes. You can also close with hashes, and it does not need to match the opening. Only the opening will determine the header level. Now for emphasis, italic and bold are supported with Markdown formatting. And Markdown supports opening and closing with asterisks and underscores. Just the same punctuation must be used to both open and close in the situation of italic and in the situation of bold. Sorry for saying that this fourth line in bold is italic. Sorry that I said that. It is supposed to say, I meant to say italic, italic, bold, bold. The difference being that the italics are represented with one asterisk at the beginning and end, or one underscore at both the beginning and end, whereas bold requires two of each. Yes. However, the punctuation at the beginning and end would need to match. You cannot mix and match asterisks and underscores. You begin and end with asterisks, or you begin and end with underscores. So, depending on the service, Markdown may suggest, for instance, that you use one underscore on each side for italic and two asterisks on each side for bold to prevent confusion. Though you could have one of either for italic and two of either for bold, you need to begin and end with the same. Now let's read the paragraph information. In Markdown, any number of consecutive lines of text is a paragraph, just like in the HTML definition. And any line that even appears blank is considered a blank line. You can include lines that only have spaces and or tabs. Now for line breaks, there will not be a line break after a sentence that just has a line break in the source code. For the source code to actually represent a line break, you need to have two or more spaces at the end, because having every line break is every new line is a line break. That would not work well for Markdown. You really need to add two or more spaces. It might seem inconvenient at first, but it does take some time getting used to writing in Markdown format anyway. So if you do not end with two spaces, it is not going to create a new line. You need two spaces. Now, block quotes will be indented, so it's basically email format. You start with right angle brackets and you keep going. So block quotes are allowed to have headers. In this example, it's a 4th level header. You can also have nested block quotes within block quotes. You can also use code blocks. You can also do lists within block quotes. You can do all sorts within the block quotes. And then you can return to the first level as well. And then the lists will also, I do not know if the indentation is typical, but you have ordered and unordered lists. In this source code example, I have used all 3 punctuation symbols that can be representative of unordered lists. Technically, the first 3 list items use asterisks. The 4th and 5th, the next 2, would use plus signs. And then dashes are used for the final 2, the 6th and the 7th. However, these are all unordered list items. It does not matter what punctuation I use. And while the ordered list appears represented as an unordered list, technically, Markdown's proper syntax is supposed to represent the ordinal numbers on the listings, or, well, not ordinal, but I believe cardinal numbers are represented. But either way, you have the 1, 2, 3. If you have numbers, it's an ordered list. But while Markdown can allow you to be lazy and start an arbitrary number, we recommend that you continue for compatibility reasons on 1. And 0 is not necessarily an acceptable value in that case. I do not know what happens if you start a list at 0 in Markdown. But now, this example below, 2025, a perfect square, 45 times 45. Now, I had to \escape this example so that I did not trigger an ordered list by accident. Now, this line break is represented as a horizontal rule by 3 asterisks. You can have 3 or more asterisks, and I believe hyphens and underscores are also allowed. Now, you can insert spaces, I believe, between the asterisks and hyphens or not the underscores. Please correct me if I'm wrong about Markdown syntax. But I did use the 3 asterisks in a row. I could do that. I could do spaces, and it would be the same thing. Now, for code block and code span examples. The code blocks, the blocks below, code blocks are represented with 1 level of indentation. If you indent the code, 1 level is removed from each line of a code block. Now, you have to indent every line of your code block. And as with all block elements, you need to have 1 or more blank lines separating it from the general Markdown. So that's what a code block is. So in this example, the ls and then use cd to change directory. CD is actually part of a code span. I just need backticks for a code span. And code spans are allowed to flow within the Markdown. Blocks are not allowed to flow within the Markdown. The same can be said for the difference between span level HTML elements and block level HTML elements. Inline HTML is supported for span, but not for block level HTML. Now, reference link styles. You have 2 brackets back to back for reference, and you have brackets and parentheses for inline. Now you have alt text and then the ID, so the alt text first, and then the ID comes second. And then we have the ID, and then the colon, and then space, or any number of spaces, and then the path. Now, the angle brackets are actually optional for the path, and then quote, title, end quote. If you have an exclamation mark prior to the proper link syntax, then Markdown will consider it image syntax. The same can be said for the inline. You start with the brackets of alt text, and then in the parentheses, you have the path and an optional title. Any references to title are actually optional. All you technically need is the path. The title can be omitted. And then you also have an implicit link path, no, an implicit link or whatever. Implicit link, I think it's implicit link title or whatever shortcut. So you can actually omit everything from there. And I believe the ID would just be the same as the alt text in that way. I think that's the implicit link name shortcut. I do not know exactly how it works. Now, the inline links I already mentioned, the alt text path title. Again, title is optional. And whether it's inline or reference, image syntax is nearly identical to link syntax, except that images must begin with an exclamation point. For additional information, automatic links can be represented. You need to place your path within angle brackets, and if there's nothing else, that is the automatic link shortcut. For backslash escapes, the punctuation marks that are represented, you will not necessarily be able to see. You will be able to see all the backslash escapes, even if it's pretty difficult. So the next line is intentionally, I almost started out saying intentionally left blank, I'm not sure, but check the source code for more details. Sorry. The source code will be available on GitHub soon. Backslash escapes, and then backslash, backtick, asterisk, underscore, brackets, curly brackets rather, and then square brackets, parentheses, hashes, plus sign, minus sign, and then periods and exclamation points all allow backslash escapes, underscore and dash. Now for additional reference, There are two characters that demand special treatment in HTML, ampersands and left angle brackets. They will be encoded automatically unless you specifically use escape or unless you use inline HTML. Markdown is smart, but will not enforce the escape sequences at all when doing code blocks. So it's easy to write about Markdown's own syntax as well as HTML syntax. Much more straightforward compared to the much more complicated process for HTML from raw HTML. And all the block quote rules still apply. And by the way, while you only need one level of indentation, one tab or 4 spaces for, say, code blocks by default, you actually need 2 levels of indentation minimum, 8 spaces or 4 tabs for code blocks. I'm not sure about within block quotes, but it is definitely you need 8 spaces or 2 tabs, 2 levels of indentation for code blocks within lists. Now, see you soon. Check back for another video coming to Nova Top Flex soon. Thanks for watching.